and welcome to Ask Your Academic. Today's session will cover the MSc Immunology and Inflammatory Disease and the MSc Infection Biology. We're joined by our programme leads and they're here to answer any questions that you might have about the programmes that they run. A number of questions have been submitted before today's event, so we'll do our best to get through all of those. And if you've got any additional questions, you can pop them into the chat box and we'll keep a wee eye on that. You can also use that to say hello and let us know where you're joining us from. If after the event, the session, you've got any further questions, you can find the administration email addresses on the different programme web pages on our website, and you can direct any questions there. I'll also pop some useful links into the chat box for any questions you might have about scholarships, funding, applications, etc. The session today is being recorded, so that will be made available to you after the event, likely next week. So that will be emailed to you and it will also be on some of our web pages on our website. So we do only have a short session, so if it's all right with you, we'll get started. So if our academics could introduce themselves and give us a bit of an overview about their programme, that would be great. Kevin, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name's Kevin Maloy. I'm a professor of immunology and I am the convener or course lead for the MSc programme in immunology and inflammatory disease. The programme really has three components. The first semester, we have really a compulsory course on lecture course on basic immunology and translational immunology. That forms the kind of basis of the knowledge that you need to understand immunology. That runs for the first semester from September until December. And in parallel with that, there is a research skills course as well. And together, those courses make up 60 credits of the master's degree. And then in the second semester, there are a number of optional courses, which you can choose various options to make up another 60 credits. And these courses run for 10 or 20 credits, and we have a wide range of options. I'm just looking at a quick overview here, but the beginning of the second semester, you choose between animal models of disease and diagnostic technologies, and then you have things like options on neuroinflammation, health, emerging viruses, omics technologies, bioimaging. So you can select a variety of these, and that makes up another 60 credits. So that makes 120 credits. And to get the full the Master's Award, you need 180 credits. And the final final 60 credits comes from a research project, which you undertake in the last part of the course. The students have just started their research projects now. So normally you go and you do what we call a wet lab project. So you go into a lab, there's a little project there for you, and you do real experiments, you get real data, and you write up a lab report. And it's very good preparatory work for anybody who's considering a further work in academic science, or even in practical work, maybe in biotechnology or a pharma company or so on. And so altogether, these credits make up your 180 credits that you require for the Master's Award. And there's a series of assessments that run at the end of and throughout the semesters, after each different course that you do, to assess how well you did in the credits, and then we can monitor the students and the progression through the year that way. So what we hope is that you gain a really deep knowledge of basic immunology, but you also understand aspects of translational immunology, especially as it reflects to inflammatory diseases, which are very common now, or to immune diseases, even cancers. And so we want people to have that command of the application of immunology as well. And finally, get some real practical skills and lab work that you can take forward with you into the workplace or further study. I'll stop there.
Thank you. And Robert?
Okay, I'm Robert Davies. I'm a bacteriologist and I'm responsible for the infection biology course. And what I'd like to do, Naomi, at this stage is to answer two or three of the questions. I'd like to screen share something to show the structure of the course. Is that okay? they'll be able to see that, right? Okay. Okay. So we have a number of questions, one of which is along the lines of explaining providing an overview of the program, which Kevin has just done for infection and immunity. We have another question relating to timetable and another question relating to the choice of specialisms. So what I'd like to do, if I may, is capture those three questions all together by showing this image of the it's from our program information document, and it shows the program structure over the course of the year. So as Kevin has already mentioned, the structure of all our MScs, the basic structure is the same. There are 3 60-credit components. So for the infection biology component, the first part of the course, the first 60 credits, I'm not sure, can you see my cursor waving around? Okay. So the first 60 credit part of the course is made up of 2 components: research skills for immunology and infection biology, and host pathogen interaction. So these are 20 and 40 credit courses. There are 1 or 2 questions about the amount of practical work in the program as well. So I'll touch on that here. So the main project work or laboratory work comes in at the end of the program, but there are 1 or 2 courses, smaller courses, which have a small amount of practical work, and research skills for immunology and infection biology is 1 of these. So it's predominantly lectures, but there's a little bit of laboratory work. Host pathogen interactions is made up of about 35 lectures and tutorials. Then we move on. So that's the first 60 credits up until Christmas, December. Then when you start back in January, this is when it gets a little bit more complicated, and you have a choice of options, which are shorter courses. They're 3 weeks, 3 weeks, and 5 weeks, and these are worth 10 credits and 20 credits. I won't say too much about these at this point. I won't even name them. You can see the names there. You'll have all of this information when you start. But you have to choose 1 of the 10 credit courses from each of the choice of 3 that you see there, you know, across the screen. And similarly, for the 20 credit courses, you choose 1 of the 3. And this is where the specialisms kick in, because our program is unique in that students are able to choose to specialize in either bacteriology, virology, or parasitology. And that basically means that when you graduate, you will have an MSc in infection biology, and then it will say specializing in bacteriology or virology or parasitology. You don't have to choose to specialize. Many of our students don't, okay? That's up to you. You don't have to make that decision until later on in the program as well. But what is important is that you choose the right options before you make that choice, okay? I'm not going to talk about what those choices are right now because you don't need to know. But the other important point is, which relates to 1 of the questions about the specialism, round about November, you will have half a day or so where the people leading each of these options, okay, comes into a lecture theatre and spends 10 minutes or so describing and telling you about each of the options, including how the assessments work and so on and so forth. So you will learn all about the details of these options then. And then you can go away and think about it, and you have a week or 2 in which to decide which options you choose. Okay, so that's how the option choice is made. And then in the final part of this second 60 credit part of the program, we have design a research project. And this is linked to the projects themselves, which make up the final third or the final 60 credits. We've had 1 or 2 questions about the projects and how they are sort of allocated. The way this is done is that you get to choose which projects that you do. Okay, so we provide a little booklet which gives the project titles and then also a paragraph about each of the projects. You have about 3 weeks in which to choose your projects, and part of the selection process involves you contacting the project supervisors and having a meeting with them to discuss the project. And then you make a choice, you list your top 5 choices of project, and we try to allocate the project of your choice. And generally, about 80 to 90% of students get their first or second choice projects. So this is done in about late February, that process starts. So the projects are allocated sometime in March before designing a research project starts. And the importance of that is because designing a research project is linked to the project that you choose. So it means that when you start that option, during the option the option consists of a series of lectures about just general stuff about designing projects. But at the same time, you get to meet your project supervisors twice. You have 2 meetings, and you talk about the project, and then you have to come up with a project plan before the project starts. So that allows you to read about the project and be well prepared. So when you begin the project in May, you're well prepared, you've done lots of reading, you've had meetings with the supervisor, and then you can get stuck into the project. There was one question about timetabling. I hope this overview of the structure of the program gives you an idea of the timetable over the year. What I can't do is provide a detailed day-by-day timetable, which you don't really need at this point in time. That would be too much detail. But hopefully this answers that question about timetabling at a kind of lower level over the whole year. So hopefully that's covered a number of questions there about the overview of the program, about specialisms and timetabling. I've also addressed questions about the amount of practical work involved as well. Is that okay? We can take further detailed questions if there are any as well. I'll stop sharing and come out of that.
Yeah, no, you've ticked off quite a few things there. Thank you. Kevin, I think there was something you wanted to add.
Yeah, that was really helpful to see the overview that Robert gave, and the structure of the 2 master's programs is almost identical. In fact, some of the optional courses in the second semester are common to both the immunology masters and the infection biology masters, but there are a few separate ones. And also in the first semester, the lecture courses are, again, there are some overlapping lectures, but there's a lot of separate ones as well. But in terms of the structure, it's the same. I forgot to mention, it's quite important, that in the first semester for the immunology masters, at the end of the semester, what we actually do is we take all of the students to the annual meeting or congress of the British Society for Immunology. And that's the biggest immunology meeting in the UK. It's probably the biggest annual immunology meeting in Europe. And we go there and we stay for the whole congress, and you're able to see really top speakers from across the world who come to the UK. It's in different cities every year. Last year, it was in Liverpool. The year before, it was in Edinburgh. So we get the bus, we go there all together. This is all part of the course that you get when you register. And you really see and feel what it's like to be in a proper scientific congress and see the top speakers in the field tell you about the latest developments. And what we do for that is every student has to pick one topic that has a session at the congress and write a dissertation about that gets graded at the beginning of the second semester. So that's a nice thing about when we get student feedback. The 2 most popular parts of the course tend to be the research project right at the end, and this trip to the British Society of Immunology annual congress, which the students really appreciate. It really gives them a feel for what it's like to hear about really cutting edge science. So I should have mentioned that at the beginning.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll just move on to one of the next questions. So Robert's kind of touched on this, but there were a few questions about the sort of project aspect of the Masters. Can you tell us a bit how that works for your programme in terms of how students would pick? Do they pick a topic? How they pick a supervisor? Is there anything they should be doing for their project before they start their Masters?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Robert says. We have a list of the projects, and the students say which projects they rank their top 5, and then we allocate the projects the students and as best we can. Normally you get one of your top 3 project choices. Not always, it depends on how some are more popular than others. And again, normally before you start the project, we do again this designing a research project module, which allows you to find out more about that. The way that we assess it is slightly different in the designing a research project than the way it's done in infection biology. We both go to the same series of lectures, same kind of informations, but what we have done this year in the Immunology Masters is we run a poster day where everybody makes a poster that highlights the area of the project that they're going to do and the approaches that they're going to take. And that's actually an assessment that we make, and that goes towards that 20 credit assessments that you get for the design and the research project. So the way that we assess that part of the course is slightly different than it's done in infection biology. But we feel that also this idea of making a poster, when you go to the BSI Congress, you see there's these massive poster sessions where all PhD students and postdocs present their work on a poster. And we thought that was a very useful and really practical exercise to get our students to do as well. So that was also very, very popular this year and something that we'll stick with. I think that's all I want to say about that.
Robert, I don't know if you want to add anything, if there's anything that you feel you need added, or if you're quite happy.
I think I covered most of what I wanted to say. We can, looking at the list of questions, we've probably covered most up until the fast tracking question. We can probably, because we've only got about 6 minutes left, we can probably cover that. I don't really know what's meant by that question. Students are not fast tracked onto a PhD or MPhil. The course is completed and then they apply. The only thing I would say, a new type of PhD has been introduced the last 2 years, which is called an intercalated PhD, and that allows students to complete the first 120 credits of the masters and then go into a PhD. But the PhD already has to be set up, so it's slightly different. So it's kind of a form of fast tracking, but that's not a standard PhD. Otherwise, I'm not sure what that question relates to.
So actually,
it's not something that is done basically.
No.
Just on that iPhD that you were talking about, there is actually information on each of the web pages that are involved in that. So there'll be more information on the website for that. Just jumping back onto the questions that we've got there. A few of them were about any sort of preparations that students can do before they start their masters. Is there anything that you would recommend?
Yeah. Can I answer that first? This is a question that we get every year, actually, and the course is so broad that to recommend reading, specific reading is very difficult. And when the students come in and start host pathogen interactions, that's a very intensive course, and the specific references will be given for each of the lectures, and the reading is quite intensive. And I wouldn't really recommend starting that process before. However, what I would say, there's a book, and I'm going to screen share. Oh, hang on. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Kevin, do you want to?
Yeah.
I've got a little something I wanted to show, but it's not picking it up because it's not recognizing it.
So just to, again, I sort of echo a lot of what Robert has said there. We do provide in the course information document some suggested reading, introductory reading to basic immunology. And we also provide some material, which is a kind of primer for some of the lectures that will be delivered during the first course. So we do give a little bit of introductory reading. You'll get that once you're fully registered and accepted on the course. Again, it's not too intensive, but it's really good just to give you an idea of some of the basics and the basic terminology that you'll come across in the first term.
Thank you. You managed to find your link, Robert?
Yeah, hang on, let me try again. Oh, here it is. I had to put it into a PowerPoint. Okay, what I would thoroughly recommend reading as preparation for our course, as I've said, the variety and the breadth is huge in our course, and it's difficult to recommend anything specific. But what I would thoroughly 100% recommend as an introduction is this textbook, Mims Pathogenesis of Infectious Disease. So this is a really famous textbook in the field of general pathogenesis. It's now in the 6th edition. It's called Mims because that was the name of the person who first wrote it, and he's died at some point. But the book is such a well-recognized book that they've kept it going, and they've kept his name now as part of the title. And this really covers all aspects of pathogenesis of both bacteria, viruses, and parasites. So it's a really, really good grounding to the course, and especially to the first 40 credit part of the course, host pathogen interactions. Okay, and probably what's worth saying as well in relation to that is when our students come into the course, September, it's a sudden change for you all because you have to find accommodation and so on, and that course is quite intensive, and it's probably the one course that students struggle with the most of all of the teaching. So if you could do some initial reading in that area, a general reading without going into the specific papers which are given with each of the lectures, I think that would be advantageous. So I would thoroughly 100% recommend buying this textbook and reading it from cover to cover before you arrive. Okay, I'll come out of screen sharing.
Thank you. I'm just seeing the time there, and we're just approaching the last sort of minute or two. There's just a question that's came through in the Q&A box, and it's for yourself, Robert, asking, so Kevin had mentioned the conference that Immunology and Inflammatory Disease students will attend. Is there anything sort of similar for your programme, or is there any sort of groups that are set up for the students to sort of join?
No, we don't visit a conference. With Kevin's program, the timing of their conference is convenient so that it fits and that they're able to do it. But with infection biology, it would be more difficult. There's a conference in the springtime, but it falls at a more awkward part of the course, and we don't do that anyway.
Perfect. And just, we are at the end of our session. We were a wee bit late starting, so apologies for that. Is there anything that either of you would like to add that you think is important to kind of say before we sign off?
Someone did ask if it's possible to take extra courses. And I think it may be possible, but I wouldn't really recommend it. These are full-time academic courses, and we expect you to, if you're not in organised timetable teaching, we expect you to undertake independent study and additional reading to further and deepen your knowledge. So I know that some students do take on some jobs as permitted by visa regulations and so on, but in general, you've got to approach this as this has to be the #1 priority for the year that you're here studying, is that you allocate proper amount of time. You should be available from 9 to 5 every day during the academic terms, and we expect you to be doing additional study even outside of those times if you want to get good grades. So I wouldn't, if you come here, don't come here to think about doing additional courses. Come here to focus on your master's degree.
Thank you. And Robert, is there anything you'd like to add?
There was a question about jobs that we haven't covered. We do ask students to keep us informed of where they go afterwards, but none of them do. So it would be nice to have a record of the jobs that our students go on to, but they don't tell us when they leave. But what I can say is that some of our students go on to do PhDs. Others go into other research environments in industry, biotech companies, that sort of thing. Others go into teaching as well. That's another area. So they are some of the key, more related areas. But unfortunately, we don't have accurate records where all of our students go.
Yeah, and some are clinically qualified and they go back and pursue their specialisation a little bit further clinically, at least in the immunology degree. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thank you. Well, thank you both for your time and taking time out of your busy day, and thanks everybody that's joined us. As I said, this recording will be made available probably next week, and we'll get that sent out to you. So if there's anything you missed or you'd like to rewatch, you'll be able to do that in your own time. So thanks again. We hope you found that interesting and useful, and hopefully we'll see you all in September. So thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.